Thank you. So we are going to start now. Good morning, everybody, and very warm welcome to all of you. I'm briefly going to introduce Shri M Nagarajan, and then I will introduce Shri Dadi Padamji. So Shri M Nagarajan is an IAS officer of the batch of 2009 Gujarat cadre. He has a varied work experience over 2 decades in government departments like the railways, RBI, among others. He has been a district collector in the Aravali district of Gujarat, working for the welfare of the tribal region, and later as the district collector of Kutch, which we all know is a strategic location for India's defense. He has led the Surat Smart City mission as the CEO of Surat Smart City Development, SPV, and received accolades for the same. Believing that technology can be a game changer, he has conceived and implemented many projects for rural and urban communities. Sri Nagarajan has a master's in public policy and economics. His projects have won major awards, including the SKOC Award for Excellence and the Manthan Award, amongst others. He has been chosen as District Collector Digital Champion 2014, and Mr. Nagarajan is an avid blogger and a startup mentor. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you.
I will introduce now Shri Dadi Padamji, who actually needs little or no introduction in a manner of speaking. But anyway, a very warm welcome and a good morning to you, Dadi. Because Dadi is almost considered the doyen of Indian puppetry. Born in Pune, Dadi started puppetry as a hobby and later as a profession in 1976. He attended the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad and specialized working in short films. Dadi has trained under several erstwhile institutions in puppetry, from Darpana in Ahmedabad to the Marionette Theatre Institute in Stockholm in Sweden. His work in puppetry spans decades, and his involvement with the medium has spread across several well-known organizations, both national and international. Dadi conducts workshops in institutions and is actively involved in many festivals which involve puppetry. The recipient of many awards, from the Padma Shri to the Sangeet Natak Academy Award, amongst others, Dadi continues to enthrall audiences worldwide with his artistic renditions in puppetry. He has held several important official positions and has collaborated with many organizations like the NCPA and with well-known personalities to bring the art of storytelling through puppetry to audiences worldwide. Some of his recent endeavors have been performances based on short stories using the art of puppets along with music, movement, shadow images, and projections. Indeed, an illustrious personality and dedicated artist, Dadi is the managing trustee and artistic director of the Ishara Puppet Theatre Trust today. The Ishara Puppet Theatre is one of India's major puppet trusts working on path-breaking performances, design and collaboration for India and the international world. Dadi is also the president of UNIMA, Union International de la Marionnette, which is the World Puppet Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged to introduce both these people to you this morning and looking forward to a great session. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, and namaste to all of you. And Sri Nagarajan, I think, would like to say a few words before we then continue with Sri Dadi Padamji. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. It is my privilege to be an initial speaker in this session by Dadi Padamji. I would like to set the context for this session, and then I would leave the floor open for Honorable Dadi Padamji, who is a doyen. when we talk about toys, this India Toy Fair is now come so far because of the vision set by Honorable Prime Minister, when he looked at toys as not just culture, but also a way of building the next generation, strengthening the economy, and also creating Atmanirbhar Bharat. If there was something that looked like a fun, but could mean real impact on so many fields, that is a toys. And even among toys, our share of global trade is only 0.5%. So it is very imperative that each and every one talk about the toys, not just for the child development, but also for the development of the youth, and also make proper impact of it in the business sense also. And with this toy fair is come to has created a new platform where all the players of the toy industry could come together and deliberate on the various aspects of toys. And this platform could bring eminent people who have done a lifetime of work in the toys. And today we have puppets. I had the privilege of listening to Dadi Padamji in Ahmedabad Design Week, where he had done a very exclusive session on puppetry. And he had laid out the various aspects of puppetry, right from its history to its prevalence to its impact, and why he feels that puppetry is a very impactful thing for humanity as a whole. I am indeed honored to be part of this session, and I look forward to a very enlightening and informative session from Dadi Padamji for all the participants across India who have joined us today. And I thank Lolita Madam for hosting this session.
Thank you, Sri Nagarajan, and over to you, Dadi, and we look forward to your contribution to the session. Thank you very much. Dadi, you're muted.
Right. Good morning. Lolita, you have to ask the questions and moderate.
Well, I can do that, but I think it would be nice if you gave a brief introduction about the kind of work you do, and if you are planning to show us something like you did for the Ahmedabad Design Week, that would be nice.
Well, whatever one had said and shown was already earlier done in that the design week part. So right now I don't have something, but I'm trying to think about how linking puppetry and toys, things like that. I mean, the puppeteer or a traditional puppeteer or anybody may not necessarily like to say that his puppets are toys, but they can be adapted. They can be, they're two different things. Puppets or puppetry is a medium, एक माध्यम है जो from which you communicate to audiences. So without the puppeteer or without the audience, for me at least, and I think for many of us, the puppet is an object. Either it is revered, as in traditional puppeteers, maybe also by modern puppeteers because it gives them their livelihood. But as a toy or a figure, maybe again I wouldn't say toys for adults as well, toys for children, but toys when you play with that figure or you imagine life in that figure, and also create a story holding your doll or whatever figure or toy, whatever it's made of. Maybe it's more a self-play thing. You are communicating or putting the ideas into the figure and back to yourself, or maybe to one or two other people. So the work that I do combines a lot of elements. I've said this many times before, that my work is not ends in itself. And this is a quotation, or this is a thought that comes from one of my mentors, teachers from Stockholm, Michael Meschke, who said that puppetry need not be an ends in itself, but it is a means of telling a story. So when you say a means of telling a story, you can attach or you can add other mediums, dance, music, theater, masks, objects, projection, as we have done recently. So there are many other things that could be possibly, put into a performance. In most of our traditions in Asia, Southeast Asia, we've never boxed theater as one thing, music is something, dance is something else. It has come in later, but in our most folk traditions, from where all this begins, there is an amalgam of all this. There's never just puppets. There's never just text. So there's never just, movement. And I think the best art form to show all this is puppet theater. We have some very excellent traditional techniques, performers, families in about 7 or 8 states. The most well-known, fortunately, unfortunately, is from Rajasthan, because they have traveled a lot itinerant, and they come from originally Nagaur district in Rajasthan. And the form is called Katputli or Kaat Ki Putli, and wooden puppet. The interesting thing in most of our puppets, most of them I would say in Asia, is that the form, the puppet is not known by the technique as in the West. Well, we say string puppet or glove puppet, rod puppet, shadow puppet, plus others. Here is mostly named possibly by the material that it's made of. That is something that links it maybe to making toys or things like that. I'll speak about that later. So it's a Kaat Ki Putli, Katputli, and Katputli cannot be anything but a string puppet which is from Rajasthan. Now, if you don't know that it's a string puppet, you wouldn't know that it, by saying Katputli. You cannot call a Dangir Putul, as it is from Bengal, rod puppets, a Katputli. Thankfully, we have a whole gem bowl of languages in India, and each of them have their own name or term for puppets. So if you go down to Odisha, you have the shadow puppets there, and they're not called shadow puppets, they're called Ravan Chaya. And there are many myths or legends to this, and why it's called Ravan Chaya, because the gods didn't, have shadows, only Ravan, poor chap, always pointed to as the demon has a shadow. And so it's called Ravan Chaya. And there is only maybe 1 or 2 groups, original groups, who can perform this. If you go down further to Bengal, you have maybe the only state, Bengal, which has the terminology from the technique. Now, nobody has researched this. Why? Is it a colonial influence? What is it? Because it's Tarer Putul, as in string puppets, or is Dangir Putul, as in rod puppets, or Putula Nach, which is a generic term. But as soon as you go further down, also in Maharashtra, Chamriachi Bhaulia, leather puppets, or Tolu Bomalattam, as in Andhra Pradesh, Tolu as in leather, Boma as in figure, and Attam as the play. So all of these, as Kerala, Karnataka, all of them have their own terminology, but due to the language, due to Hindi, where puppets are known as Katputli. So we also say Katputli. While in English, it's puppet. It could be Putul, it could be Putli, whatever, but then Putul or Putli could be a doll as well. So this is something that I just want to clear. Yeah.
So Dadi, we all know that India has a fairly deep-rooted tradition, in fact, of puppets, which is spread, as you rightly said, across the country. I mean, Bengal has a certain kind of puppet, the leather puppets of Rajasthan. In fact, I've even seen some puppets in Ladakh. So there have been a lot of, suddenly, I think, an interest in puppets and what puppets can do to us and how they can be a part of a certain learning ecosystem. So would you like to elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think we are also ultimately going to talk about how design impacts puppet. Now, while you and me may have had a certain, let's say, kind of learning in design, But I think we can later talk about how design is actually so cross-cultural and so transdisciplinary that it spreads into so many different genres of things, which one of them, which is puppets. But maybe we could talk a little bit about, I think, the art of storytelling through puppets and how it has impacted us, or how it is evolved in today's context.
See, the traditional puppeteers or the traditional families have their own, I wouldn't say daira is not a limitation of form, but they have their own repertoire mostly. Originally, if you saw from the performances of Rajasthan, the stories, the original story, and maybe the only one that we know of is Amar Singh Rathore, which is their famous hero from Nagaur, and his work and whatever happened to him in the Mughal court. And that is the way of taking his life as the hero from Nagaur, where these puppeteers come, and then taking it to other places, other states. They are the puppeteers who have mostly settled and traveled a lot all over India, Rajasthani puppets. So that's why whenever and I say of puppets, everybody does this, and that means the string puppets, because they connect it with Rajasthan. But there are so many other techniques and styles, and I would say more after, I would say, post-independence, the Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, and these are the people who have sort of managed to bring out these forms. She traveled by foot, by cart, by bullock cart, all over the countryside, and identified puppeteers, people, and in whatever way exposed them to the world, to India first, of course, and to the world. In fact, in '78, I remember in Bangalore, there was a huge shadow puppet festival. And it was the first time that the shadow puppeteers from Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, they all came together. Many of them maybe knew, maybe didn't even know. Some of them speak the same language in the south because they have a lot of influence of Marathi that comes into their, and they have settled maybe because of travel. And all, if you go, I would say most of the traditional shadow puppeteers, their repertoire comes from the epics, Ramayana or Mahabharata. And they do certain segments, or they do a condensed version, things like that. The ones in Bengal, yes, also, but they have more social themes. Maybe from the Yatra theatre form, they have messages, things like that, which are incorporated into traditional or epic stories as well. Besides that, I would say the others, even the string puppets from Odisha have, Sakhi Kundhai or the other form. They have stories of Krishna, gopis. So many theatre forms, I would say even puppet theatre forms in Europe originally started from nativity or religious festivals, things like that. And it has then grown. Today, I would say that in fact, many of our younger puppeteers, both traditional as well as the modern, are searching for new ways, new mediums to tell the story and new stories. So the Kerala puppeteer, shadow puppeteer, is doing stories who normally only do the Tolpavakutu tradition, only do the Ramayana in the Bhadrakali temple, which has a concrete built stage in the compound for them to come. In fact, right now, this is the season where they're performing. They have started, one of the groups has made up of one on the life of Christ, and it's called it Christi Pavakutu. They're planning something on Gautam Buddha. A younger puppeteer from the Kerala shadow puppet tradition has worked with robotics, with a new firm, and he has with the puppets, and they are working with little motors on joints, and the question became a whole issue. Why this? Why eliminate the human element or the puppeteer when he's already alive? So the idea was that, okay, it's to expose this form in exhibitions, in airports and things like that. So in Kerala, they've just done it, and they've succeeded. So each to his own, I would say. The modern puppeteers mostly some of them are here online listening. They are more urban based, and so all their stories or their things to say come from around their milieu. They might also interpret epics. They will interpret the epic. They may not use the epic toto, and they might want to say something through it. Let me tell you that even the traditional shadow puppeteers have characters in their epics, which bring the epic or humor to the present situation, to political satire, to the place where they're performing, whether it's in the village or city or whatever. But language is very important there. Each of them have their own text and language. Yeah.
So would you say that, as children, I think some of us played with those little glove puppets and it was great fun. It was a toy, since we are talking about toys. We looked at that puppet, or we looked at that little creature. I remember I had a few. I remember my son had a few. And they were things we played with, and they were a part of toys or toy making. Do you think that we could look at puppets as toys as well as puppets as a medium of communication? How would this work?
Is there a similarity or a difference? And that's what for what's a toy or a doll or a puppet? Okay, a toy has many versions. A toy on a wheel, toy with 4 legs, with 2 legs, whatever, and a doll. A doll, again, what is a doll? Is it a figurative thing, a human being? What is it? So maybe the material, and as I said earlier, it is something to play with. You give life to it as you give life in a puppet, more with your imagination. You're imposing a life onto a figure, while as in the puppet, there are definite movements that you give and to communicate. And technology has grown a lot in puppets and puppet theater, movement of eyes, animatronics, all sorts of things have come about. But the toy part, in fact, let me tell you, even where I started in Pune at that point of time, started with 2 string puppet toys. It was a Pelham puppet company from the UK, which now has closed down. I think it's gone to US. And they made these wooden, simple puppets. And that's how I started. And then through mostly hobbies, through books and things. And it's only in 71, when I came to Ahmedabad at NID, that the whole world of relating design, material, whatever, to my work happened. And in the evenings, I was involved with the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts, which had a puppet section run by the late hair contractor. And that is where it got more formalized. I would say till then, I didn't even know that there were so many other traditional styles. I just knew maybe of the Rajasthani puppets, which I said is the most exposed. But what could be done, as Mr. Nagarajan, if I'm not mistaken, he said about creating Atmanirbhar. Why haven't we used is not a good term, but the traditional puppeteers have good technique, have worked with materials, but they're stuck in a certain form using that same material or the same story or what. Well, I think it would be fantastic, which I said in the design talk as well earlier, if students from the design schools could take up a project where they could make small puppet kits, and this would give employment to the puppeteer, both modern as well as traditional, to make these. There is a company which makes these little box kits, Madhubani painting, block printing, this, that, and the other. So there could be something which employs the puppeteer to make these small puppet kits, or give unfinished figures, which a child or a young person who's interested can put it together and paint on it or do things with it. This is very possible, and it just needs a little bit of push. It needs some encouragement. Definitely, it needs some sponsorship. What comes to mind just now is that one of our biggest industrials have taken over Hamleys. Okay, and if you're talking about Atmanirbhar and things like that, where most of those toys in Hamleys are coming from. Will they encourage design students or design colleges or design people in India to work on, on toys, if you're talking about it, for the Indian market, for the world market. There are some people who are making very good, ecologically, well-made toys, wooden toys, whatever. But if all these puppeteers are there, and most of them, let me tell you, are living sometimes on selling their puppets. The Rajasthanis are, more than the shows they're getting, are just, selling puppets in fairs, for craft fairs. Sometimes not even making them themselves, wholesale, they're buying them from Jodhpur, and selling them. The shadow puppeteers are the ones who make miniature shadow puppets for sale, lampshades they've gone. But if you see Indonesia, the shadow puppeteers have gone far ahead, making other products. And the technology of convert leather, colors on them that don't fade, things like that. So little imagination and working with them, I think it will go a very, very long way. Also, what we noticed in UNIMA, Union International de la Marionnette, the national body in UNIMA, India, they've had master classes. And master classes were sometimes mostly urban young people from design, art background, theater, and they would stay 2 weeks with a traditional master puppeteer and create something. There was one that I was asked to do in Jaipur, and this was to do a class with the youth, performing youth of traditional families. As they call them here, they're saying generational puppeteers. And the idea was to expose them to so many things that have been done in the world of puppetry all over, but also to how to use color, form, basically simply the OHP, which nobody touches anymore in classrooms, overhead projector, animation, things like that. And it was very simple, but some of them have got an impetus from that, and they are doing. There's a grant which has come about for small amounts which have been given to 2 or 3 groups. One of them is from Odisha. Shankarjeet is here also, who's listening to, where this traditional shadow puppeteer is going to create his own little story. Maybe not even on the screen, because he says to carry a screen and 5-6 people. So he's using the OHP to tell his story. And now we're trying to show him that there are many ways than just a flat shadow that is used on the screen. You can move the light, you can do different things. So to create different things, it's very easy, but exposure is needed. And for exposure, festivals where people see other work, where they can, interact with puppeteers, this is very, very important.
Yeah, I think there's a lot sort of happening in the world of how puppetry is used or seen. I have seen a couple of the festivals, your Ishara Puppet Festival, which definitely attracts a lot of school children and a lot of youngsters who then therefore get interested. And I think making the kit is a great idea, because that is something that could really be the, local vocal kind of situation. It could be something which is indigenously crafted and can be made as an expression of interest. You could tell maybe even stories through it. So I don't know whether you agree with this, and whether the kit can definitely be a part of storytelling and for toy making in the future. How do you see this? Do you see this as something that's going to happen and can happen, and will it happen? And how will we sort of use it? How will it emerge as something, whether it's technology based or whether it's handcrafted? How do you see the impact of this on a younger generation?
It already is happening in many ways. It depends on where this puppeteer or the puppet person is situated. If he's in very remote areas, it's difficult, connectivity is difficult. But let me tell you that most of our traditional puppeteers today are online with their phones, with things like that. And I would say that mostly the puppeteers in the South are more savvy with this. They have their own blogs, they have their own sites, things like that. So the exposure, recently there was something that I had done for Whistling Woods Academy and also for Pearl here in Delhi, where there was were their students, a talk, and I got Chidambara Rao, a traditional puppeteer, to show his work. And many of the students hadn't seen this stuff, and they had only seen it at the craft fairs, little puppets being sold. And the idea developed as to what can these people, or how can they contribute, or how can the puppeteer also contribute to them. This was the question. The students, of course, said, we've got technology, we can make their sites, we can help them to, go online and do this, that, and the other. The puppeteer then has to say, yes, they want to do it. The older puppeteer was a little, not sure, but his children, his daughter and his son, both, one is doing BSc or finished, whatever, the daughter, they all were very interested. So this is something that can happen, but it needs some, it needs a little bit more work, as the NID itself. I think in one of my some years ago in this, what is it called, when you have this interaction where people from outside are called and a lot of the students join in to do a workshop for 10 days. It's going to happen again just now every year, but this time online. I remember at that point of time speaking to the director, and he was very keen, and he said, okay, why don't we call 1 or 2 shadow puppeteers to stay on campus and the animation department and see what can be done by them, because it sort of lends itself to animation, maybe 2-dimensional cutouts, stop frame, things like that. But I said, what will the students, they'll make fabulous stories, they'll do, what is it going to be that the puppeteer is going to take back? Is he going to be something? Are you going to show him a basic, simple techniques on the phone to make films? What? So this is the question that needs to be answered. Appropriation is another issue which is very important these days. You have urban artists, imitating or making Madhubani paintings, t-shirts, and selling them as Madhubani, and they of course have more access. So the Madhubani artists, is stuck. Or the same thing in puppetry as well. And there's an argument going that if I'm doing puppetry of a traditional style from one state, then I will call it that name. I will call it the Yakshagana, Gombiatta, or whatever. Why should I call it something else? But then I don't know where this discussion will lead to, but when the traditional form fellow or the family is already there, and sometimes there's better work, then you need to work with them, get something from them and make something more with it, whatever, this is a question that we need to, on ethics, which all design students need to learn about.
I think you're very right, Dadi. I think we need to work more efficiently with the medium. And how do you think we can encourage youngsters where we look at maybe initially the puppet as a toy, or we look at the puppet as a fun thing? How can we encourage more youngsters in India to be a part of this growing culture, where you are one of the few people who have done this in a sort of an urban scenario? Traditionally, we know it happens in rural India. But why do we not have more people who are encouraged to take this up and to do something with it? What is stopping it? What is it that, maybe the government can do, or maybe we can do as people? I'm not sure, but it's just a thought.
I think we need to look into ourselves there, and to look at the institutes, and to, right now everything gets very market oriented. So, what is needed? Okay, maybe I'm not sure about you, but when I was at NID, there was no computers. Everything was done by hand. Okay?
Not me either.
so when a new thing comes in, everybody gets led by that. And yes, life maybe gets easier, but some of the other skills are forgotten. I cannot work on the computer as somebody else right now. A student will be able to do things, to make a poster or a design. And when I look back, I am happier for the skills which I got in a foundation year of working with different materials, of using tools, of basically being able to sketch and draw. Many people can't do that. Many people, I'm talking again about presentation, about making the portfolio which all of us, carry on.
Yeah.
And how do you present something to get work? How do I project, I'm doing a story, I'm doing this. What is it going to look like? What is it? No sponsor or corporate is going to just come up and say that, okay, go ahead and do it and trust. This is where, I don't know, the design schools need to have a class. I think some of them do have craft, whatever it's called. They go in and documentation.
Yeah, documentation. Yeah. No, I think, you see, to me, what is interesting is that the government seems to have taken this great initiative about toys and, indigenous toys, cultural toys, heritage, bringing the whole story together. So puppets obviously fit into a niche area there as well. So since they've taken this initiative and we are looking at doing something, how can we focus on this more? I mean, what is it that we can do to really encourage the younger generation is my question, because everybody, as you rightly said, yes, the computer is a great tool. We all use it effectively and smartly. But can we go beyond that? Can we do something where we bind technology, where we bind tradition, where we create a kind of platform for the youngster to come forward and to make it more engaging and more meaningful for him? Is how can we do that in a learning process, let's say?
First, it needs a lot of thought. I do not know what happened, because from Ahmedabad, the NIT had been approached to start, I forget the name, design traditional folklore, something design center in Odisha. And the idea, when we were there, some of us said, but who is going to benefit from this? These are students who are going to come from outside and just take folk things and make dhokla, new stuff or whatever. And they said, no, that they would be giving scholarships for a year or whatever for the traditional artists to come there, students, young people to do that. I do not know what has happened to that. Sometimes things just lie on paper. What I spoke about, this huge corporate is going to take over Hamleys. Do you think that they will or they can put in a certain grant to institutes to work with traditional puppeteers to create things, to create new objects, to create toys, to create whatever? It's going to give employment, it's going to give livelihood, it's going to get exposure as well, give exposure as well. So this is what needs to be there. There needs to be something that comes from within, that that there is this thing as well, that a market could be created as well for that. Why did this age-old Pelham puppet company in the UK produce little string puppets, dolls, toys, whatever you call them, or wood lathe turned little figures which could be put together and strung up? And that's what I got and started. I got a stick with a lathe round ball and a little costume or something, and that was a kit which I put together, and then you painted your own thing on it. So this could be done with any of the puppet styles. And if it is being done with the other craft kits, as I have seen at I forget the name of these people who have started this company, block printing, this, that, a little cutout, village houses, things like that, craft things. This can be done with puppetry as well, very easily, and with material that is friendly, with material that is easy to use. It's possible. You have tons of things right now on YouTube and on the net as well, where people can go and do things. But everybody, in some ways, with this pandemic, the urban puppeteers also have a huge problem. They're in the cities, but the ones in areas where they've existed because of their own land or farm, some of them don't, they manage, but otherwise their performances are just stopped. It's starting now. I mean, You can't imagine. We performed. I've just come back yesterday from Chandigarh, and we had a 4-day puppet festival in Chandigarh. The Ishara Puppet International Festival each year happens in February. And last year was the 18th festival. This year we couldn't have it. No international groups would come. And Chandigarh normally takes 4 groups from the international festival. So when I got a call and they asked, can we do this? I said, there's no international group. The only thing that's possible is that I'll give you some variety of Delhi groups, because you're not going to pay travel from the south to Chandigarh and all. And I can say that this is there, and if you want to. So they selected 4 performances from 2 or 3 groups, and with 2 of our group and another Shamim's group selected. And it was after 1 year that we performed with a live audience, and that too with a full house. With, of course, isolation, all that was done, and they were worried that nobody's going to come, but there were people lining up to come because they've been locked up. They want to see things. But again, it depends on the administration. There they took the courage and the guts to go ahead and do it. Now I don't know what happens. They've done the festival and they got a good response. And due to that, I had a talk with them and said, always international, why not even do a national one? So they said, yes, let us plan next year. We could have even a national festival in which the traditional puppeteers would be called. And again, there, the quality was the issue. They said, if we are calling some people, we will pay the travel, we will try and get the budget, but we need something more. We need to do workshops with schools, work with the traditional puppeteer. We need to expose them to other younger students, not just as an ethnographic curiosity, but something more. So I think that can be done.
Yeah, I would actually really request Mr. Nagarajan to be a part of this conversation at this point and see if he can shed some light on, maybe policy for puppets or toys, or if something like that is going to take place. Mr. Nagarajan, are you there? Can I request you, please?
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to make a move.
You had to, okay, I'm sorry, but if you could just, because, you seem to have done a lot of interesting work especially in the tribal areas. I'm just asking you, as from the government point of view, what is the initiative? What are these interesting things we can do to create a better toy industry using puppets and other things?
Yeah, in fact, it's good that this toy fair brought in a lot of aspects which are non-business seemingly, but they have a big impact on the livelihood of the people who practice it. I am very much touched with the concepts that have been just discussed, especially the idea of appropriation. Today in this digital age, nobody seems to have any thought of the intangible ownership that is there, and appropriating an idea looks, it doesn't look very big thing, but in fact it is actually having a lot of value. We have frameworks and all the intellectual property and protection, but at a very practical level, they are, adding to the leakage of the specificity and also the uniqueness that these any crafts and arts that possesses. In fact, I think we should have a practical framework and emphasize on the cultural ownership and the traditions that have been there, and ensure that the issue of appropriating gets a proper thoughts and time share in the discourse that we are generally having. This is one thing that I also learned today, that we can do certain things that are well-meaning, but could end up actually hurting the people for whom we are trying to support. So that is a very important thing.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely when you talk about appropriation and about livelihood. I think that is definitely one of the reasons why and where I think the government intervention would certainly play a major role. And it would be great to see that, we can take these initiatives forward and use it not just for income generation, but to create more sustainable models for livelihood. So thank you very much for that insight, Mr. Nagarajan. And sorry to bother you while you're traveling. But
no, absolutely my pleasure. So that is the benefit of this session, that a lot of people who are hearing are certainly grasping these aspects, that are generally happening in very confined spaces. So these islands of thoughts on various aspects, especially puppetry, because when we are talking about toys, it has been not in the mainstream. Now it has come into the mainstream. Now within toys industry and other things, how do we ensure diversity of various interpretations of toys? And that is where I feel this
True.
session is very unique. And I'm sure that in our further discussions also, this session is going to be quoted and referred often for all the ideas that has been put on the table. And people who are interested in this topic will certainly find this giving some starters for them to start thinking and also working on these angles. So that way I'm thankful to Dadi for joining us today and share this much more beautiful insights, which are the crux of his experience so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Two observations, Lolita, sir.
Yes, Dadi.
One, an example, I think 15, 20 years ago in Delhi, in Ishara, we did a small workshop, 10-day workshop. And because it was in Delhi, it was Shadipur Depot and the local puppeteers and craftspeople from there. So they had puppeteers. They had these people who make Hati Gora, as you see, all this, with scrap material and patchwork, and one other. Now, they said, can we use those skills to create the same thing, but a little upgraded? We created the most beautifully carved Rajasthani puppets, which were not going to be puppets, which were going to be decorative ideas without paint, teak wood, polished, perfectly made costumes. They had the skill to do all that. The little animals that they used to make with their own traditional material. There was all this export surplus cloth that came out, and they used that, and the look of the same thing made by the same people totally changed. We made lampshades using just crushed paper, things like that, all sorts of things. What happened was costing. They just take something or buy something and they put it. A foreigner will pay 3 times the amount Indian will pay. So I asked Laila Tayyabji to come in and figure out how do you cost this? And she gave a very good example and exercise as to Munafa, what is the material that has cost you, how much time, blah, 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 all this, and then how you put it, and then she also said at that point, the nature bazaar used to happen in Delhi Heart. I will give you a table and you can put your thing. 6 months before this was, so you can make your thing. Now, this is something that also unfortunately happens with some of the artists in, I don't want to point out, but with Rajasthani puppeteers, that it's become so easy, hotel work, selling to foreigners, that a little more effort, and they said, no, but how can, in one table, how can 10 people put their things? Carried on. They didn't do it. And every sample that they made was sold in a jiffy, wherever they showed it. And I said, look, here was the thing that you have this
opportunity.
You saw that this is happening. Why aren't you taking it forward? Instead of just going and buying these wholesale puppets, also giving work to somebody, surely, but not, creating. So some maybe have tried. Recently in Delhi, a husband and wife, and this lady used to, I think, work ages ago with Anoki, have created the most fabulous, expensive stuffed toys, right? Beautifully costumed and characters that they have made and packed in a beautiful cardboard box. And it's happening in Delhi. And this is giving work to Afghani refugee women in Delhi. They're sitting there and making the most fantastic stuff. And of course, the UN has come in because of the grant, that this, that, and the other. But now they're trying to develop it. They said, okay, these dolls, and they're going to special stores all over the world. And there is a market. So now they want to see how could we do puppets with that? How can we make the same people use the craft and make some sort of glove puppet or whatever? This has to be done. This can be done. And if this is an initiative from Gujarat, you've got some of the best design schools there. I think all of us should get together there, call Mr. Nagarajan, and do a someday meeting workshop and see how this can take it forward.
Yes, I think that's a really great idea, and it would be a fantastic initiative. And yes, I'm sure we can ask Mr. Nagarajan to intervene, because that's exactly, I think, one of the reasons for our conversation, where we are talking about, about how design impacts puppetry. I mean, that is supposedly the topic. So obviously, if we have design schools participating in something like this, you'll get a plethora of ideas. You'll get to do, so you'll just, I think, be immersed with ideologies and ideas that will come through from design schools, youngsters. And it could be a really, really interesting platform which could set up something, which could actually create puppets for the new world, puppets to communicate social messages. I mean, there's a lot that can happen. A great lot of things that can happen.
During the pandemic, most traditional puppeteers have created little video clips on, on awareness, safety, wash hand, and they've done it with their own puppets. And they're quite ingeniously done. Some go better than the others, but each of them have managed that without any help. They've done it. So that talent, that thing is there. It needs a platform. It needs.
Yes.
If one of the schools, I couldn't keep going back to NID because one was there, but the Nirma University, Pearl, all of these are there. If they could call a group of puppeteers, each from different traditions, keep them on the campus for a week or so, let them see what is being done. But just letting them see how things are made or will immediately open up their mind and give them something to make themselves. Because just that exposure and that acceptance will go a long way for them. This is
so at UID, which is part of Karnavati University, which is where I am at the moment, we are starting some interesting craft initiatives and development. So maybe as a part of something starting there, we will put this idea forth and see if we can take this into another realm of design and putting together and craft and such like initiatives. There is a question which says, how conceptually are toys, dolls, and puppets? How are they all different? I know you've answered the question to some extent, but we can maybe reiterate it a little bit again.
I spoke about puppets as communicating. I said that puppets are made to say a story. And the puppet, the medium, is as a pencil, as a dance performance, as music, as theater. It's a puppet. It's a medium of communicating. And for me, it comes alive when the puppeteer moves it and there is an audience in front. The argument just now, we were talking when the animatronics we saw with the Kerala puppets, there was a big discussion going on in our WhatsApp group that is this valid, is this that? As they said, it's a 4,000-year-old art form and this is give it impetus to grow. And the question was, but these puppeteers are alive right now. And okay, as an experiment, it's fantastic. But then the puppeteer and the robotic company in Kerala said that no, the idea is basically to give exposure. A puppeteer cannot stand in an exhibition hall and continuously 24/7 perform. So the idea was to make a pavilion, like whatever, some visit Kerala, I don't know what, it's a tourism museum and some center where they have different things, Kathakali, this, that, and then they have this screen where these puppets are moving mechanically. Of course, it will grow, it's great. But at the same time, when they say that it's doing something to the puppeteers, I asked what, and they said, well, it's giving exposure. Many people don't even know of their own tradition in Kerala. So this will give it exposure, whatever. So, and what's interesting is some of the senior puppeteers of that style told Pavaku to have also acclaimed this, that it's great, it's something being done. So toy, I would go back saying that it's a play, with a figure, a doll, and I'm maybe not the best person to say how or what, but I think Professor Yurkowski has done a very interesting from Poland, where he explains how giving animation, he calls it anima, A-N-I-M-A, is not just moving the thing, but imagining life in something. And he goes back even to stone idols or effigies where you imagine that there is life in it. It's non-living, but for you it is. And maybe that is something that is there, but not physical movement. So the main thing is materials, color. All of us in schools and colleges know red and blue. If you mix is that, is that. When the traditional puppeteer uses the color today, he is using mostly commercially available oil paints, enamel colors, dyes, whatever. So he's using the same one red color without trying to find out how he can mix or match and what can I get as shades. It's a very simple thing. That happened in the workshop we did in Jaipur with the younger artists. The first few days was nothing. Don't touch a puppet. We did little color exercises, the usual square, huge white thing and putting things and tessellation, whatever. And at that point, they were all wondering, why are we doing this? What is the reason? And then we said, don't worry. By the end of the workshop, you will realize how this can be used. What can we use? We just use whatever is available because it's economically viable to make something at the point. But if you're getting something or if you're getting a proposal or something, what are you going to do? How are you going to use text? Narrative is extremely important. What is modern maybe today for the traditional puppeteer is 20 years back. It's not modern anymore in the city, the stories of way of telling. So there has to be some way of giving them some help of how you dramatize, because they have their own version, they have their own stories and the way of telling the story, and that is stuck. So the medium and the message is sometimes not meeting. That is where the problem is. Yeah.
So we still have a few minutes to go, Dadi. I'm not sure whether there are any other questions. It would be nice. I was reading about your, endeavor with stories and story-based performances using light and shadow and projections and all that. Would you like to take us a little bit through that to tell us, or can you show us? Do you have something you could show us? Maybe no.
If I have to show you something, it will take, I'll have to get the video out. The latest performance that we did when land becomes water starts with 3 stories of the flood, the Great Flood. One, everybody knows Noah's Ark. There is a story from Manu and the fish here from India. There's Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. And Neeta Premchand in Mumbai has a huge Bombay Papery, handmade paper shop, literally like a matching center of handmade paper, huge. And she works with paper makers from Daulatabad who used to make very fine paper for the Mughal miniatures originally. Now today, technology is coming and the new cotton is coming. I'm not criticizing it, but the BT cotton, the rags from that make knots. And so they fall when they lift up and the paper can't be made. So that, anyway, she illustrated, as many people have done, these 3 stories with crushed handmade paper and block prints on them. So when NCPA came and said, can you put these stories together? We're going to compose music, blah, blah, blah. We said, yeah, but how do you put 3 similar stories? They're different till everybody gets into the boat, but after that it's the same. And to put it together. So we took different elements from different stories which are visual, and with a narrator who was a woman who was represented water, put it together. And to keep the link of where all this started with the handmade paper and the block print, I got Shahz Ahmed, an animation person from NID, and he did the projections, the animations and the different scenes of each story from the original block print, things like that, and we put it together. I have a small trailer, but I do not know how I get this. 1 second. If I can do that. We can keep talking while I'm searching.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was something for us to see. It's been a very enlightening session for all of us. Can you find it?
No, it's difficult right now. Sorry. Yeah, there is something.
If there are any questions from the audience, please put it into the chat
Okay,
box.
if I, what do I do if I click on this?
You have to go to screen share.
Okay, right. It's just clips. So 1 minute. Where is screen share?
It is
Share
at
screen.
the,
Okay.
there's a green icon. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and then you have to select the whatever clip that you want to show.
It's right. It's here. Can you see it? Can you see a
No,
page?
we can't see it.
It says host disabled attendee screen
Oh,
sharing.
then the host has to, I'm not the host. I mean,
Okay,
Univation
so
will have to, so it's too complicated. Okay, sorry, because I'm only the moderator. We'll have to get the Univation people. I don't know.
But I really think that if the interest has started and if Mr. Nagarajan and others can get this thing together in Ahmedabad, you have the possibility of, trying something or, making something, getting some students and the puppeteers together.
Yeah. So I think it's been a fairly, what should I say? It's definitely been a very enlightening session for me as well, from both Mr. Nagarajan's point of view and your point of view. And I would request, that we continue up with our endeavors and we do whatever we can. As we said, this great initiative has taken place now and we need to take it forward. We need to actually propel it with the younger generation actually into the future. And that's, I think for me, that is really, really important, is how we turn this into a learning as well as into an industry, into a livelihood. So there are many aspects to this. So Mr. Nagarajan, would you like to say a few concluding things before we conclude this session?
Yeah. So it has been a absolutely enlightening session, and we have been all appraised about the various nuances of puppetry and also how it could now be taken to the next level, combining it with the new technologies. Especially the takeaway point that he has finally said that we should work with the design schools to create some sustainable activity and cross pollination of ideas. I think that forward to working with you all in creating such a platform for the puppetry. While it has caught our imagination so far, it is time to give puppetry its due place in the other aspects of social and business life. That is how I look at it, to taking it to the next level. And I'm sure this session marks the beginning of it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being a part of this initiative today, and wishing you a very good day ahead, and look forward to more interactions in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And special thanks to Dadi also.
Yes, I'm sure. So, and Dadi, thank you very much for having taken time out to be a part of this initiative as well. And I'm sure we are all learning, and I think we'll all have got some insights, which are definitely points that we can take for the future from the point of view of policy, as well as from the point of view of design, as well as other learning initiatives. So if we put the whole story together, I'm sure we'll have an interesting product, and I'm sure we'll have interesting projects which we can take as a part of the Atmanirbhar or the other initiatives that the government is thinking of for toys, which is really a wake-up call for a lot of things for a industry which has lain dormant for many, many years. And I think it's a great thing that we are putting this emphasis into toys and puppetry and, you know, traditional things which we have we've just forgotten about, because this is an instant connect also to our childhood and to what we've learned. And if we can use this to create something for the future, for the country, I think they'll be huge, because I think we often forget that India has one of the largest platforms in terms of craft and tradition, and we don't really showcase it to its maximum advantage. So I think this is a great opportunity for a lot of people. So we're looking forward to doing this for the future. And I would really thank both of you, Sri Nagarajan ji and Dadi ji, for being a part of this initiative this morning. And have a very good day, everybody. And thank you so much. I think at this point, we are a little ahead of our time schedule, but I think we've more or less covered everything. So we should be able to leave the meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and a very good day once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.